Hi, I'm Carolyn Evans-Hammond and welcome to my tasting room. Carolyn's tasting room is where you can taste exciting wines with me, and tonight we feature a flight of terroir-driven wines from Ontario in a range of styles that all taste of their place. All of these wines come from the Henry of Pelham's estate vineyards, which are all located within the Short Hills Bench appellation, and all are VQA certified. But each one expresses that place slightly differently. So here's the flight. The 2021 Henry of Pelham, the Shadow Rock Sauvignon Blanc, the 2022 Henry of Pelham, Three Hills Chardonnay, the 2021 Henry of Pelham, the Dry River Riesling, and the 2022 Henry of Pelham, Old Vines Baco Noir. So let's taste. And the first wine in our flight is the Shadow Rock Sauvignon Blanc. Now this is called Shadow Rock because the vineyard where this fruit is grown is partially in the shadow of an outcropping of rock by the Niagara Escarpment. So what it does is it sort of shortens the afternoons during the ripening season, especially around July, and it contributes to the style of this wine. So pour yourself a glass. Let's first look at it. Notice the color. Now this is Sauvignon Blanc. It's a little bit sort of straw to yellow. What we do know about this is that this wine used to be called Fumé Blanc. And that's because it was partially fermented in oak. Oak fermented Sauvignon Blanc can often be called Fumé Blanc. It started in California, but that's another story. So pour yourself a glass, notice the color, and have a sniff. Do you notice that? This is not New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. This is different. Now there's two things here. First off, the expression is less green. It's a little bit more like a Bordeaux white maybe. So you're getting, see if you get sort of, grapefruit and honeysuckle melon. Less really herbaceous. Gooseberry a little bit, which has that slight green aroma. But it's not, and it is aromatic, but it's not green. So that differentiates it from places like Chile and New Zealand, obviously. And it's really pretty. And if you smell closely, do you notice that creaminess, sort of like a nuttiness or maybe a little bit of vanilla? That is from the oak. So I love that. It's a broad nose as opposed to a vertical nose. It's elusive. It's chiseled. And it's very pretty. It's very aromatic. So have a taste. Sweeps in, absolutely quenching, absolutely refreshing, definitely mouth-watering. You'll notice the sides of the palate. Makes your mouth salivate because the acidity is there, but it's also beautifully balanced. Sweeps in silky. Is that lovely? No alcoholic heat at the back of the throat at all. Tastes nice and dry, and it's a wine that, broadens as well as uplifts. Beautiful. Now what I love about this wine is its balance and texture, but also its mid-palate stuffing. So have a sip, focus on the mid-palate and see if you can sense that concentration. Notice that? And then the fruit expression, do you notice it echoes everything we found on the nose? So you're getting the grapefruit, and the expression of grapefruit is both white grapefruit and ruby grapefruit. And you're also getting stony underpinnings, that wet rock flavor. I do, especially on the finish. That right there is traditional Ontario white wine because it has that stoniness, and that emerges on the finish, as well as a little bit of grapefruit pith, which is lovely because it creates a little bit of texture, bridges over to what I'm very going to enjoy with this. Now this wine I think it's quite undervalued at around $22. It's a wine though that's fabulous at the table, very gastronomically versatile because it's not too in your face. There's an elegance here, a delicacy. The expression is articulate, but it's not too, fruit driven, too fruit forward. So it's a kind of wine I would love to pair with any salad at all, but especially a goat cheese salad, with some walnuts and a drizzle of maybe lemon-based vinaigrette, not balsamic, something that's sort of going to mirror the acidity here and not mar the flavors, the delicate flavors here. I'd also, love to pour this with shrimp cocktail, a traditional shrimp cocktail, because the sweet crustacean with this wine would be beautiful. So lots going on in the glass. The shorter afternoons are allowing for a really crisp wine, but also wonderful roundness and versatility. The finest Chardonnay from Henry of Pelham's estate come from 3 particular hills, each contributing something different to the final blend. And that is what we find in the glass. So 3 Hill Chardonnay alludes to those 3 hills, and pour yourself a glass and let's taste. Notice the color first. Oh, I love the color because it's so shiny bright. And it's yellow, yes, but there's almost silvery inflections. It's so glossy and star bright. I love that. Give it a swirl and a sniff. Isn't that beautiful? There's wood there. Now we do know that this wine was fermented in French oak and it was aged for 8 months in oak. So there is absolutely, wood influence, but it's so well integrated. Do you notice that? So the scents are like one seamless sphere. And if you focus, you'll notice the outside of that sphere is almost kaleidoscopic aromatically. So watch. Orange zest, hazelnut, touch of smoky stone, a little bit of cantaloupe, lemon curd and lemon zest, that creaminess, a touch maybe of meringue, toasted meringue. So lots going on, but they're so subtle. They're wispy, subtle fragrances. And that's a mark of quality. That's, a sophisticated aroma, like aromatic profile. I love that. And that's, to me, a real charm of this wine. So if you're drinking it, always take the time to nose it first. Don't lose that pleasure. So let's have a sip. We're going to let it sweep in and experience it, and then we'll parse it apart technically. Isn't that beautiful? I did not want to miss that first sip by getting too technical because it's such a pleasure. Again, like the nose where it's this smooth sphere, you get that on the palate too. It goes in smooth and glossy and then subtly starts to fan out. So now let's have a sip technically. We're going to just let it sweep in, and we're going to focus at the sides of the palate to see how high the acid is. We don't notice it's not terribly, acidic at all when we just sipping it. But let's have a sip and focus just on the sides of the palate. Isn't that interesting? Very mouth-watering. So it's actually quite high. Now, Chardonnay from Ontario has high acidity. Ontario is a cool climate, even though Short Hills Bench has really warm summers, like hot summers really, especially in July. So we get the ripeness, but it's still a cool climate. Relatively speaking, this is not Australia or California. So you're getting that bright seam of acidity, wonderfully mouthwatering, keeps everything held together beautifully and tastes luminescent. You get that? Now let's have a sip. We'll focus on the mid palate to see how much stuffing is there. Lots, ample, beautiful. And you know that because there's no alcoholic heat at the back of the throat. So the fruit is blanketing the alcohol beautifully. Wonderful. Now this is actually only $20 a bottle. I think it's $19.95 or something, which is outstanding value for a wine of this, caliber. Technically speaking, as well as just pure pleasure. There's a hedonism here. So now we're going to focus just on the tip of the tongue to see if it's dry or sweet. We know it tastes dry, but if we focus there, we'll be able to assess whether there's any residual sugar. There's a little bit, isn't there? There's sort of to the tune of around 5 or 6 grams per liter, so very little, but just enough to round out everything, balance that high acid, and make it taste so shiny bright. And we'll have another sip, and we're going to see how the expression is, talking to us. Sweeps in. Bright fruit, really bright citrus, cooked apple fruit, lemoniness, and then as that, arcs, that's when all of those other aromas start to show through. You notice that sort of the toasted meringue, nougat, nut, a little bit of stone on the finish, maybe even a hint of salinity somewhere. So beautiful, hangs together beautifully, and the subtle, nuanced complexity is really something here. So I think this is a really fabulous wine for the money. It's lingering on the finish, which is also a mark of quality. It's not very, very long, but it's sort of middle. So great for, food pairing. Have this wine with Caesar salad, or take it up a notch and grill a lobster tail for it. And the third one in our flight is a dry river Riesling. Now this is called the dry river Riesling because the dry river refers to a tributary that runs through the estate and dries up every year after the spring melt. So that's what we're tasting. Pour yourself a glass and let's see. So in the glass, the color is shiny bright. Again, a mark of stability. All of these wines are very stable, very clean, very bright. It's pale because it's a stainless steel fermented Riesling, and Rieslings can be even water white. So that's traditionally a pale wine, and that's what we see in the glass. So on the nose, I love on Terroir-Riesling for the nose. Doesn't that smell like lime sorbet to you? Oh, it's exactly what it smells like to me. There's also tropical notes. Do you notice that? Like really ripe mango and pineapple. Very beautiful. I mean, a very sweet nose. You can't actually smell sweetness, but there's a confected note here that's unmistakable. It makes my mouth watering just smelling it. What about you? Now, let's have a sip. Now, we know that this is an off-dry style. Riesling can often be sweeter. It can be bone dry, but it's often got some residual sugar in it because it balances the sky-high acidity and just makes it taste so lip-smacking. In the same way that a glass of lemonade would be sweet and sour, Riesling is often sweet and sour. And that's what we have here. So this has 10% alcohol and 16 grams per liter of sugar. I'm leading the witness a little bit there, but I think it's important in this case. So have a sip, let it sweep in, let's experience it, and let's see if it's got that perfect balance of sweet and sour so it finishes dry and is absolutely quenching. Wow, isn't that great? This is the kind of wine you can pour on the porch or on the dock easily in the afternoon. It's low in alcohol, it's wonderfully quenching. It's not wildly complex, but it's just enough complex to hold your, it's just complex enough to hold your interest, and it goes marvelously with salty foods like cheese. Now let's have a sip, and we're just going to focus on the tip of the tongue to see if you can see that 16 grams per liter. Did you notice that? You don't notice it sweeping in, but that sugar is there if you focus there. It also goes really well with pound cake. That's one of the joys with a wine like this. It can go really salty, or it can go not super sweet, but sweeter foods like pound cake. Let's have another sip, and we're going to see if we're getting everything we found on the nose echoing on the palate. Salted lime zest. That's what I'm getting. What about you? Lime squirt? Yes. Also, grapefruit. Some sort of nicely lightly bitter notes of citrus, which is nice. It makes it feel a little bit more grown up. The pineapple comes through on the finish, as well as mango, but to me the mango is less, super ripe like we found on the nose, and a little bit more like green mango, which again goes well with food. So kind of wine now I'd like to pair with green curry, like a Thai green curry. Fantastic. Or beef rendang, that Malaysian dish, you could absolutely pair this with. So versatile wine, delicious as a cocktail, an aperitif, or with a nibble of cheese, or with a full-fledged, Asian feast. And the fourth wine in our flight is red, and it's the Estate Old Vines Baco Noir by Henry of Pelham. Now, Henry of Pelham are masters of Baco Noir. And this wine, I think, is a testament to that real ability with Baco Noir. Now, this wine is VQA Ontario, but all of the fruit does come from Short Hills Bench, but because it's a hybrid, it can't be VQA Short Hills Bench. Bit technical there, but pour yourself a glass and let's taste. Notice the color first. Notice just how deep and dark that color is. That is Baco Noir. Lots of color. It's opaque in the center, tapers to a very narrow sort of purple rim. This is a 2022, so it's a very young wine, but I think it's beautiful. So give it a swirl and a sniff. Isn't that beautiful? Like just so pure, like it's like a glass filled with muddled black forest fruit. Blueberries, blackberries, black raspberries, red raspberries, but ultra ripe. Beautiful. I love that. And that is good Baco Noir. Something that smells punchy, something that smells fruit drenched and really ripe. Beautiful. So, taste. Sweeps in and it drenches a palate. Ontario is a cool climate, but it can produce sun-drenched styles of wine in the right hands with the right grapes. And this is a testament to that. It tastes saturated, it tastes ripe, and yet it's not heavy like you might find in some of the, big reds from hot regions. There's lift here, it's smooth. There is that wonderful verticality that keeps it tasting lit, lively, fresh, and clean. So let's have a sip and we'll taste it technically. Focus on the tip of the tongue. It doesn't taste like a sweet wine, so we're not expecting lots of residual sugar, but let's test that out. Have a sip. Are you surprised? This has, a fair amount of residual sugar. It actually has around 14 grams per liter. And that's something you don't notice at all because it's in such perfect balance with everything else going on, especially the acidity. It also doesn't taste terribly sour or tart, and yet Baco Noir is high acid. So have a sip. Let's let it wash to the sides of the palate to isolate the acidity. Mouth-watering? Very mouth-watering. So the acid is there, but such beautiful balance with all the other components. And the mid-palate stuffing is really tightly coiled, lots of it, which allows for, the layers to come through and elongates the finish. But the alcohol level is 13%, which is completely blanketed by plush fruit. Now the wine here, structurally, there's no tannic grip really. Do you notice that? This is not like a California Cabernet or a Bordeaux where there's lots of lush velvety tannins. Instead, it tastes very smooth. Do you notice? Have a sip and focus on that. That mouthfeel, it's almost shiny. And that's because the tannic structure of this wine is so finely grained that it just tastes polished. And that means it's a wine that, it works well as a red, of course, but it also is a wine for white and rosé wine drinkers. And that's one of the cool things about the chameleon of a well-made Baco Noir. It has such versatility. And so this wine, it sells for around $20, which I think is quite a bargain. It's a wine I like because it's very consistent year in, year out. So great wine, has some length, the kind of wine you could pour with virtually anything. But to me, it's the epitome of the backyard barbecue wine. Great kind of wine for that, but it also works well because we're moving into, cooler season. It also works really well with pizza. Try it. So there you have it, a flight of terroir-driven wines from Ontario in a range of styles that really tasted their place. Which wine did you like best? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe because I'm coming right back with another flight of delicious wines here on Carolyn's Tasting Room so you can drink better and learn how.